Oh, gosh, it's been so long. I know. And I'm going to tomorrow's meeting and Monday's meeting. I know. So I apologize. That's why I have to follow my calendar, because there's last night, today, tomorrow, and next night, and the rest of the week. Right? So anyway, I know there's a lot of really good stuff here. Thank you, everybody. So we'll go ahead and get this operations HR focused meeting started. We are being broadcast over the county channel. It is a hybrid meeting, and as is our custom, let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America,
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Indivisible. Oh.
Thank you very much. All right, we have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Nope.
And Mel is not on?
Mel's not on.
Okay,
on his way.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Awesome. Unanimous. Any public comment?
No public
comment. Moving right on. Compensation study discussion. All right. Who's going to lead this?
I will lead this.
All right. Ms. Walton.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll try to move close to the mic. Maybe. Wherever that may be. Okay, good. All right. So we're going to start this afternoon with, like Ms. Woodwright said, something that we've been all looking forward to discussing. And we wanted to make sure we were in the right place to discuss it. So we have all of your answers, all of the answers to your questions, and I'm sure you will have some. So we have with us this afternoon our project manager with MGT Consulting, and that's Sheena Horton. Sheena was going to walk you through the process of this study. She will talk about methodology. She'll talk about what we did, how we went through determining where we are at this point, and just generally tell you where we are now at the point of making a recommendation to the board. So Sheena, are you on?
Hi, Alice, I am.
Hi, Sheena. Along with Sheena, with me today is Matt Hunt, who was very active in this process, and also Dale Crawford, who was our internal manager of this process. So I'm going to turn the mic to Sheena, and you can get started.
Thank you, Alice, and good afternoon. First, I'd like to request the permission to share my screen so I could pull my presentation up.
Okay.
Oh, I see you've got it on the screen as well, so that works as well.
I can let you, I'll stop sharing and let you control.
Okay, perfect.
And Sheena, let me offer my apologies for being late. So I apologize that you had to sit and wait.
Oh, no problem at all. That's the nature of living in a Zoom virtual environment these days. All right, well, I'm glad we all were able to get together today. As mentioned, I'll be walking through an overview of what we did with the study. I know you're very familiar with the methodology we use, but just as more so a refresher. And then I'll cover some of the recommendations. You should have also received a study handout that lists some of those changes for the pay plans, as well as copies of your current and then the proposed plans. So I won't have those shared on the screen, but you do have that handout, which will be a little bit easier to see. So as mentioned, I'll just go over the main project objectives, methodology, and talk about the results of the compensation study. And that includes, of course, reviewing market salary data, as well as our benefits review. And then I'll cover, in terms of next steps, what we provide in terms of our ongoing support, and then just open it up to questions and discussion. So as a refresher, for the classification and compensation study, it's first and foremost a market study. So the main aim is to make sure that you have a system that is accurate, up to date, and market competitive. and equitable that really supports the attraction and retainment of qualified employees and provides room for that career advancement and career growth, as well as weathering any changes for workforce changes in the future. So having a system that is aligned with best practices as well as ease of administration really enables you as organization to keep pace with the market more easily, have consistent implementation, as well as ensuring that you have clear pathways for career advancement, as well as equity within your ranges and system itself. As part of our project, after we've provided recommendations for updating those systems, we also include phase-in strategies. A lot of organizations can't do these kind of changes within a single year, so we do provide some strategies in terms of best practices and how organizations approach implementing these changes. And of course, all these details are also provided in the final report in terms of best practices regarding ongoing administration of the system, not just initial implementation, but administration over time, as well as maintenance of the system. So weathering any kind of cost of living or inflation changes, minimum wage adjustments down the road. So anything in that regard, there's some best practice guidelines included in the report on that as well. For the project, you might recall we had 10 key steps, 9 being the core steps that we concluded during the project. We kicked off the project with the internal project team to discuss the overall objectives of the project, communications between our teams, but also communication regarding distribution of information about the study, introducing staff to what a classification and compensation study does and does not do, as well as details and training in regards to data collected. So our survey processes in terms of gathering job data, information from the supervisors relative to recruitment or retention issues, outdated job titles, any issues regarding career ladders or advancement, things in that regard. So in the beginning, a lot of that was that initial data collection from staff as well as from your HR office to review what you currently have in terms of plans and policies and placement of those positions within those plans. The next step following that data collection, our team focused on pulling market data from a variety of different sources, which I'll cover in this presentation as well. And focusing on benchmarking all positions, conducting classification reviews to make sure that we have a full understanding of that job and what it is doing today, making sure it has industry standard and accurate job titles to really enable candidates in the market to be able to find your job, apply for that position, and making sure it's recognizable, just to, again, to support recruitment efforts. Part of our data collection also included a market survey in which we reached out to peer and competitor organizations to gather a cross-section of salary and benefits data for comparison as well. This also includes policy information because competitiveness isn't in a box of just total compensation regarding pay and benefits. We do also look at policy and how systems are implemented by your peers and competitors. So it's one thing to offer high salaries, but if you are receive a salary, for example, but there's no clear pathway for growing down the road and you might be stuck at that same pay rate for years, that's not considered as much of a competitive system. So you really want to have something in place for governing movement within your system, promotions, any kind of adjustments in terms of updating the system itself, and in regards to longevity, for example. So we look at a variety of different things when we look at the market and determine market competitiveness. As part of the study, after gathering that job data, we also updated your job descriptions as needed. This was focused on providing that data for re-uploading into your HR system that houses your job descriptions. So those were provided. All those details regarding this methodology and more are included on the draft report and the supplemental appendices that are within that report, as well as copies of the surveys we used. So if down the road you want to utilize the job content questionnaire we used or the management issues paper survey we sent to supervisors, you have a copy of that instrument to use on your own as well. And again, within the report includes some implementation strategies, which I'll go over in this presentation. So I talked a little bit about the data gathering from employees. So for the market data source itself, we focus on a couple key areas in terms of data sources, as well as the recruitment markets. Now, recruitment markets can vary depending on the position. Some positions you can recruit no problem locally. Others you might have to cast your net a little bit wider. So we do look across a variety of different parameters as well as sources to make sure we can find good benchmarks for positions and to benchmark as many positions as possible. As part of our studies, we do try to aim to benchmark as many as we can instead of a percentage of. We really do try to do that to provide you the most accurate, up-to-date system. With that, we had two main sources in addition to our market survey that we do of your peers and competitor organizations is Salary.com Panelist database. And try to think of this database as a survey of surveys. It's probably one of the more comprehensive market data databases out there today. It's all employer reported data that is compiled and updated monthly and provides it across a variety of different industries as well as different market areas. So we can cut down to different metropolitan areas, statewide, down to the zip code, for example, as well as split between different industries and different sizes of organizations, whether it be headcount and FTE or by revenue size. For this project, we focused on these key areas. So looking at South Carolina statewide, the Charleston, South Carolina market area, Savannah, Georgia market area. And then one of the key ones we used for the majority of positions was a regional metropolitan composite, the average of the Charleston, South Carolina and Savannah, Georgia area. Within these markets, we of course include a couple industry scopes. Again, all industries, all sizes, just as a general baseline. So again, if down the road you need to expand how far you cast your net for positions, you know how that varies across different markets and can expand in terms of those recruitment market areas as well as industry. We of course included public elementary and secondary education, all sizes as well as cut for a revenue group for Beaufort, to again provide a comparison and show that variation between those different market areas. And again, we focused on those of comparable revenue size to Beaufort. For the custom market survey, our team began that process in January of this year and conducted an online survey as well as additional outreach and online research for gathering information. With these key 10 peers, we were able to gather some data for them. Some of these were both benefits and salary data. Some were just salary data and or benefits, for example. So that include, of course, Charleston County School District, Henry County Schools, Savannah Chatham, Richland School District 2, Rock Hill Schools, York County District, District 5 of Lexington and Richland, Naperville Community, Fort Mills School District, Lancaster County School District, and York County School District 1. And more details about the market survey included in the report, as well as a copy of the market survey we used and the data. So again, following the classification review, as I mentioned earlier, in benchmarking, that's when we really conduct the market assessment and where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. When we look at your current system and assess essentially where folks are falling within your current system, where compression points are occurring. So do you have a number of employees currently surpassing your max of your system or that are topped out? Do you have certain employees that are coming up, closer to their supervisor salaries? Just any of those compression points that indicates we might need to either update your system or create something new. From there, we're also looking at your percentage spread ranges. So, is there room for movement and career growth within those scales, or do people top out quickly? From that, we do a series of different modeling to determine what's going to be a best fit for your organization and workforce, and that's going to support your overall compensation strategy and philosophy going forward. From there, we did a series of different models and discussed the implications of each. And talked in terms of really focusing on updating your system relative to ensuring equity across all those plans, which you'll see in a moment on those recommendations, how those were implemented, as well as, again, building those plans out to accommodate your workforce and growth. Each of these models also included a calculation of implementation costs, and I'll go into that a little bit more on a later slide as well. So again, we decided upon looking at your current pay plans, and this of course also includes some of the recent updates that the district has made for its pay plans as well, in updating the system to be more market competitive, more equitable between the different plans, as well as addressing any kind of current compression issues. We also included a couple of considerations for strengthening the district's benefits. Overall, the district's benefits are competitive, but we do always provide some additional thoughts for consideration in terms of if there's any additional benefits you would like to include to set yourself apart from any peers or competitors in the market. So now we're going to get into what everyone's very interested in, is the actual pay plans itself and what those recommendations are. And again, copies of your current pay plans and the proposed are included in that handout. So for the administrative scale, and this is similar to the other ones we have as well, you'll see some of those similarities, was updated to be market competitive. We also updated this scale and others to have a consistent spread between the grade levels. Your current pay plans had variation between those grades, which can also lead to a greater frequency of encountering compression issues, as well as equity issues when you're moving the system. It can also make it more difficult for maintaining a system and keeping it up to date. So we are on the side.
Ms. Horton, may I interrupt just for 1 second, please? I apologize.
Oh, no problem. Sure, absolutely.
I'm on the page, but and I'm following her, but it's coming across that she's speaking from something that we don't have, and that's a little confusing in the way she's doing her presentation to me as a member of someone who has to teach and who has to take this in.
And in board docs.
So this is in board docs.
It's in board docs and I'm online.
Sorry, Mr. Smith, I'm following along online. You need to get, if you're looking at the pay plan she's referencing, they're in the appendix of the online board documents, appendix
I don't have that. I don't think I have
board docs.
Okay, so did you get your computer?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, then you come down here and share with me.
That's,
You sure?
That's no problem.
Okay, so this is what she's referencing. There's this huge supporting, this is just a PowerPoint. This is just to glean the important, right? So the report, also the whole report is right here online, and this was in board docs for us. So if you, again, you want to share this with me?
Clarity is better, because I'm looking for something, and I thought that maybe it would be in the packet. Normally what's in board docs is in the packet, and that didn't take place today. So therefore, so that's not, I don't want to come across that I'm lost or I don't understand or not prepared. Normally what's in board docs would be presented to us. So therefore, what she was speaking from, I had no idea of.
Great, thank you for stopping,
Yes, that's what,
so that we can clarify.
Okay,
You're good?
Yes.
Which document is it? The presentation draft, the public final report.
Public final report.
And what page are we on?
I'm looking at page, I believe it's 12. Would that be right, Ms. Horton? Are you referencing page 12? It is the proposed pay plan for the administrative ranks.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Crosby.
Sure. So going back, you'll see a lot of similarities and adjustments to the plans, again, to provide equity between those different plans and positions. So most of these, I think except for one, most of these needed to have adjustments for market competitiveness. So administrative plan was one of those to be updated to be market competitive, also to have consistent spread between the grade levels. And essentially, as it says, we made sure that 5.5% separated each grade to allow for adequate separation between positions and also for meaningful movement. Often is the case, you'll see if you have very tight pay plans, and for example, if you had a top level, not top level, but a top system in a series of jobs, say a 1, 2s, and 3s. And the next step would be a managerial or supervisory type level. You want to make sure it's a meaningful movement to that next step, so folks are encouraged to take those kind of jobs. Sometimes you'll hear folks don't want to move to a managerial level. Why do I want all that responsibility for not that much more pay? So we always want to make sure that we're encouraging folks to seek professional development and advancing their careers, and to, of course, assist you with any kind of succession planning and growth as an organization overall. So making sure you have adequate spacing and consistent spacing in between your grades is very helpful in doing that. And same thing on an equity note, just making sure you have equal distance between the steps as well, to again encourage retention and growth in pursuit of further professional development within your workforce. As with all plans, as you do these updates, if you're not creating something 100% new, usually you have to build upon your current plan to make sure there's adequate space for movement when we make these kind of adjustments. So as you're placing folks into a system, you want to make sure you can maintain your current internal hierarchies, and that there is space for setting where supervisors fall, for example. So we want to make sure we're not causing compression as we're implementing and recommending these systems. And of course, providing that flexibility for, whether a year, 2 years down the road, you want to add a position, you have room to do so. And you're not already, topping folks out or running out of room within your plan. So that's one of the other strategies that we use as well. So with the administrative plan, we added steps 25 through 30. To allow that room for growth, as well as 2 new grade levels to also accommodate your schedule movement, and added a line for superintendent as well. Again, level 215 just provides additional room for market adjustments and maintaining that hierarchy and supervisory lines within this group. And similarly, the classified plan was updated as well in that similar fashion, and making sure that there is consistent spread between the grade levels. In that case, 5.6 and between the steps of 2.7. Now, these are going to vary somewhat depending on essentially the spread of market salaries that you're looking at in a particular plan. So if you've got the bottom part of your scale at 20K and the top might be 50K, another scale might be more between 40K and 80K, you might have different percentage spreads between those, just depending on how large of a system you need to accommodate your workforce composition, as well as placing those in the system. So there's a series of models which we do to determine best practices in terms of what's going to fit best for your workforce. But generally speaking, folks usually aim between, and we're seeing more these days, 4 to 5% in between grade levels to, again, allow for that kind of meaningful movement and encouragement within a system. Similarly, and you'll see this in the other plans as well, we added additional steps, step 25 through 30, to allow room for growth and support retention. And for the classified, we need to add 1 new grade level, level 115, to again provide room for those market adjustments and maintaining hierarchy when we update grade assignments. Certified plan.
Oh, would you prefer questions to wait to the end, or do you want to address them as we go through this? Your call.
We can wait to the end, and then I can just hop back to any slides that we would like to review again.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So certified plan based on degree level. So again, these were based on the market data primarily from your peer organizations from the custom market survey. And in that, those were updated per their market averages, and additional steps like the other plans were added, step 25 through 30, to again allow and support room for growth in that plan. Occupational therapist and physical therapist, your current pay plan was actually found to be market competitive. Market competitive is usually within 5 to 10% of the market average, and also making sure that in terms of staff that folks aren't already maxed out, making sure that there's, again, room to grow. So overall, that was found to be market competitive, but we did make some adjustments to that to, again, mirror the other plans for consistency, and making sure that there was a consistent percentage spread between the steps within the plan, 1.8%. And additional steps 25 through 30 were added as well. Similar registered nurse and social worker, again, was updated to be market competitive and have consistent spread between the steps, and additional steps 25 through 30 were added. Bus driver plan was updated to be market competitive, as that was found to have fallen behind a little bit, and to ensure, again, consistent spread between those experience steps. Additional steps 25 through 30 were also added. So with these changes, and of course this incorporates some of those other recent changes from the district's plans as well that you'll see in the pre-study plans in the appendix to the proposed plans. And from these adjustments, we break the cost up in a couple different ways. So with this, we're looking at adjustment to minimum, remaining adjustment cost, and total cost. Total cost you see here is about 4.3. And the way we break this down is by essentially best practice in terms of implementation. So adjustment to minimum cost represents that cost to adjust employees who have a current salary that's falling below the proposed salary of their new plan and grade. So those folks are the ones that you want to prioritize for that first year to make sure they're brought up to the minimum as quickly as possible. Within that first year, there's also some other strategies we use, I'll show on the next slide, that we want to incorporate in that first year to avoid any compression issues. And that incorporates some of the remaining adjustment costs. So this is after folks are adjusted to minimum, what the remaining cost is to get them to their base salary or their appropriate step, for example. Now, if they have a salary that's already at or above where the study calculations show they should fall, then there's no market adjustment we had. That means they have been market competitive, paid competitively along the way, and aren't needing a market adjustment. So these two adjustment costs are broken up in this way, again, for assisting you with implementation strategies. And keeping in mind, these are estimates. So this is based on the latest employee information that was provided. And then any data changes after that would need to be incorporated into your implementation plan. So again, as best practice, you want to move employees with a minimum salary below the recommended assigned grade up to that as soon as possible in that first year. And then usually in that first year, to offset any kind of compression or to even focus on those more hard to recruit positions, for example, just depending on what funding you have available, usually organizations will focus on between 15 to 25% of that remaining adjustment cost to make those changes. It really depends on what implementation schedule you settle on and what's going to be available in terms of funds. Most organizations opt for a 2-year plan. I haven't encountered many organizations that can do it within a single year. There are some that have a bucket, set aside for making these kind of changes. I work with state lotteries. They're probably the few that consistently are able to do it in a single year. Sometimes it's multi-year. So we do provide you a variety of different options. There is an argument to be said for being able to implement within a single year because it is easier for administration. You get it all done at once, and you're not having to manage and keeping up with the implementation plan for year 2 and year 3. And the data is based on the latest market data available. So you also don't want to extend your implementation strategy plan too far into the future for full implementation, because then you'll already find yourself falling behind. You'll be having to add any adjustments for inflation, for example, along the way as well. So on the next slide, this provides you just a couple ideas and options of how organizations typically split up these kind of costs from what I described before. So these 3 options detail a couple different avenues. So the first option being adjusting folks to the minimum that are falling below, and then 25% of those remaining adjustment costs. That's about 1.4 mil. Then the remaining adjustment cost would be about 2.9, for example. Folks tend to lean more on even split, which is more reflected in option 2. This essentially is adjusting folks to minimum and taking half of the remaining adjustment costs in that first year, and then any remaining adjustment cost, and of course any employee changes between that time and the next year of implementation would be in that year 2. Now option 3 is one strategy. For instance, if budget's really tight and you're not able to implement across the board, some organizations will focus on those that have been most hard to recruit or retain. So again, you'll focus on that adjustment of those folks below minimum. And then sometimes it's a combination of a 25%, of the remaining, and then maybe an additional percentage for those that are hard to recruit. In this example, we took your coordinator positions, for example, as what that cost would look like if we were to focus on hard to recruit, in the coordinator positions. And this again is split between 1.4 mil in the first year and then 2.9 in the second. That said, there's a lot of different ways you can approach this type of implementation. But by and large, best practice, you want to focus on bringing those folks up to minimum first, and then a proportion of that remaining cost to not correct, but to address any kind of compression from moving those folks upward first. All right. So that's on the pay side. On the benefits side, we did survey your peer and competitor organizations, and that includes districts as well as local city and county that you compete against as well. So overall, the district has a competitive pay benefit system rather, and is higher on average than your peers at 47%, and the peer average is about 44.5%. When we're talking about benefits as a percentage of total compensation, this is essentially that value on average to an employee. This includes, any kind of worker comp benefit, FICA, all those different intangibles, as well as the overall benefits package. It's paying for healthcare, retirement, paid leave, for example. All that would be incorporated in determining what that percentage of total comp is. And it's always best to frame, whether it's during recruitment, consistently with employees, to remind them about the total package and value that they're receiving as being an employee at the district. So it's not just simply a pay number, you're also looking at the benefits value as well. So similarly, and with a lot of other organizations, dental and vision do vary quite a bit. District is competitive in terms of offering multiple options. That is very attractive to a lot of candidates as well as employees for staying with the organization. Premiums are just going to vary across the board on those, but we are looking at those that are most affordable when compared to your peers. By and large, varied quite a bit in terms of dental. Vision, you were a little bit higher in premiums than the surveyed school districts, but you did offer lower premiums compared to the city of Beaufort. Retirement, and a lot of organizations, this will be kind of similar across the board in terms of your peers and competitors, so school districts especially. Again, focus on defined benefit and defined contribution plans, most of which is through the South Carolina retirement system. And paid leave, a lot of this was pretty comparable to your other districts, except for sick leave, in which the district really stood out from its peers in offering up to 720 hours of paid leave compared to the peer average of about 120. And it varies quite a bit. Within the report itself, you'll be able to see what that variation is between the high and low of what's offered by the peers. And we've seen a lot of changes in this area since, of course, the pandemic. A lot of folks are offering more of sick leave banks, which of course is one of those additional benefits offered by the district and other peers. Other similar benefits that are offered, of course, life insurance, disability, flexible spending and health savings accounts, employee assistance programs, which is pretty standard these days, and supplemental insurance, which is including, of course, critical illness, accident, and cancer coverage, all fairly common these days. So we didn't have any specific recommendations for needs in terms of updating benefits, but we did have some considerations if the district wants to further set yourself apart from your peers just to make it more attractive as well, and things that we see that are very popular in the market that are really attracting folks, especially younger folks in the workforce as well. So education assistance tuition has always been a popular offering, as well as folks really focusing on those additional wellness benefits these days. Wellness has become more first and foremost on the forefront of this employee-driven market, so that any kind of discounts, anything supporting work-life balance within an organization, rewards programs, is very attractive to candidates as well. Two others, of course, no secret, paid parental leave is coming up more and more as a benefit that organizations are offering and strengthening if they've already got it, adding more to it in terms of providing additional support to their employees. Another one that's a little odd, but if you own a pet, you know how expensive they can be. Pet insurance options similar to your supplemental insurance. That's also becoming a very popular option to offer. There's also other strategies you can use for communicating the total value of what you're offering to your employees. So using publishing a summary of your benefits on your website so it's clear to candidates what they're receiving as part of their employment. Using total reward statements for communicating that value. Usually most organizations send something out annually. but we also encourage, year-round benefits education opportunities for employees. By and large, usually it's maybe an annual statement, and then you might hear it in the beginning at recruitment. You don't hear as much about, the value of what you're receiving outside of open enrollment. So sometimes even just having a lunch and learn or small workshops or something that goes to employees to pinpoint and really show them, hey, there's this benefit. Don't forget, this is offered to you by the district. We want you to take full advantage of what we're offering you as part of being an employee here with us. And it really is helpful for also making sure folks are taking full advantage of those plans that you're offering and enrolling in those different options. So for example, any parental leave program, you could offer, a one-on-one session for new parents, just so they really understand what that insurance does, what their options are. And employees tend to really appreciate that kind of extra effort by our organization to help them fully understand what they're being offered. And as we've all encountered last couple of years, flexible work options, of course, very popular right now, has been a pain point in some areas. Some jobs just require you to be on site. Others, you can offer more hybrid remote work options, which is, again, helping to fill some of those vacancies that are out there today for a lot of organizations. So just being open to that and providing that as a benefit, and flexible work options can really help as well. So with that, and some of this again is in the final report in Chapter 4, compensation systems should be evaluated regularly just to adjust and address for any market changes. Cost of living adjustments are very common for managing that kind of adjustment in terms of inflation, using consumer price index, or Cost of Living Research Center has output number they put out every year. Also doing any kind of targeted changes. So if you are finding it really difficult to fill a certain position, having a market evaluation for that position just to make sure that you're keeping pace with those changes in the market can help as well. Generally, full class and comp studies like this are done depending on the organization, every 3 to 5 years. 5 years being usually when folks reach out to us. We've had some folks reach out to us after 10 years, but that's becoming less and less common, just given the markets that we're encountering these days. As part of all our projects, MGT does provide ongoing support for 12 months post-study. This is to address any questions about the study, providing additional training to your HR team to assist with implementation, talking about any of the recommendations, or coming up with new strategies just to make sure you have a successful implementation plan. In 2020, we definitely had a handful of our clients reach back out to us and said, implementation plan we came up in late 2019 is not going to work anymore. Can you help us rework it so we can still implement and keep pace with market, but weathering those obvious changes. So we like to provide this just to make sure you have the tools and support you need to have a successful implementation. And with that, that's my presentation. I'll just open it up to any questions from the group. And of course, Alice, if there's anything in particular you wanted me to focus on in more detail, please let me know as well.
Ms. Horton, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And Ingrid, for your edification, in the room, Mr. Mel Campbell is here, Mr. Earl Campbell, Mr. Smith, Miss Crosby, and Mr. Odding, and I think Dale and Matt and Alice you introduced, and Robin. So we have a full house. Questions?
I have I'm trying to find my hand. Every time you do Zoom, it's like a different format.
Let's go ahead.
Okay. One of my questions is, did we do the classified? I mean, certified? I thought we weren't doing the certified. Did we do the certified? And is the certified in that $4 million amount, the $4.3 million? I'm just confused.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for that question. It's a great clarification. So we did update the certified plan itself, but certified, that is not included in that cost amount. That was excluded.
Okay. And I had two other quick questions. Did you say that most school districts that you looked at in your market analysis offer 120 hours of leave, and we offer 720 hours of leave?
That's correct.
So by the day, that is almost what? That does not make any sense to me. That's almost 100 days of leave. How does that work?
It also depends on how they group it. So not everyone offers separate vacation or personal. Sometimes organizations group personal in with sick leave as well, or they separate it out. So it may also just depend on the offering by that school if they separate it out differently. But by and large, that's what we receive from those school districts in terms of what their averages were.
Is that cumulative? I mean, there's no way we're offering 90 days of leave a year. I mean, that's got to be.
You can save up to 90 days. And so
Up to 90.
so you know, that's a difference of times 6.
Yes.
So the way I made sense of that is that they took our 90 days and you lose it after 90, Ingrid, right? You know, if you have 91, you lose the 1, and it just kind of lumped it all together. And maybe like Ms. Horton just said, other districts classify it differently.
Okay.
So
that was such a big discrepancy.
Yeah.
So you might accrue up to that amount, but of course not everyone's going to take that off.
Right.
And one final question I had, and then I'll. So it went up. The payroll went up 9%, 9.2% and change on certified staff. Just, I know Tanya's in the room or Miss Crosby's in the room. What did our classified payroll go up? What was the percentage increase to our certified?
Assuming a step increase is about 2%, which I think it may be a little less than that actually, but that would be 8%. So 3% cost of living for last year, 3% for the new year, plus a step increase. So I would say in the range of 8%.
Okay. Those are my initial questions, Ms. Fidrich. Thank you.
Where's Henry County?
Outside of
Atlanta? Okay. I just wanted to know.
fast growing district.
Yeah, well, yeah, I see a lot more Y's on Henry County than all the other counties. But that's the first thing I want. Second thing is she said that she compared industries along with school districts. And I think one point was made about Beaufort's premium, Beaufort city premium versus our premium insurance. Sick leave insurance, I think.
Ms. Horton, can you hear Mr. Campbell?
I can a little bit. It's a little bit muffled.
Okay.
I was talking about your methodology in which you said that you took information from industries as well as school districts.
Mm-hmm.
Got a sense of the industry part versus the school district part and how it related to your conclusion. Can you hear me?
I can. Sorry, it was a little bit quiet. So I think in terms of, if I understand your question correctly, so we look across a variety of different industries. So with organizations, you're going to have those positions that can move between different industries, no problem. So your basic administrative assistants and some IT, for example, finance, basic administration type jobs. Then you're going to have those that are more specific to school districts themselves. And those are, of course, best compared to other school districts. But we do pull both composites to look at, because again, if you're not having a problem recruiting or retaining your folks from other school districts, but you're losing a particular position to the city, for example, then we want to look at that as a competitive factor and make sure that you have pay that can compete with the city pay, for example.
All right, I understand. I'm thinking what we were looking for was a lot more school district specific in terms of our district versus other districts, either in the state or in the region. And I see you did compare with a number of schools that I assume was competitive to us, but did you look at the cost of living factor involved in Beaufort County versus the other counties?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that was filtered into your findings.
That's correct. When we pull the market data, we do adjust.
Yeah.
On that and when I said where can I be found at, in your analogy of doing that and presenting that, where on this PowerPoint and the evidence that can be shown.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I'm having a little trouble hearing from further in the room.
No problem. Where can I process and digest the information that what you just said that you did in your PowerPoint? Where can I go to your PowerPoint and read that information?
Not in the PowerPoint, but we do provide Matt, Dale, and Alice with a copy of the overall master file that has all the market benchmark information, the calculations and review, and assessment that we did as part of the study. So I'm not going to have those specifics mapped out in this PowerPoint just because it's more of a higher level, but we did provide all the data that we reviewed as part of the study to your HR office. And the report's going to have copies of the data that was collected through the market survey for those peers and competitors in terms of pay and benefits, but the actual analysis is going to be within the file itself.
Yes, so if you look at the public filing report that was in board docs, it's in Appendix A and Appendix B. So you'll glean that information.
So this question is for Matt, Dale, Alice. This is not your first glance at this, is that correct? Have you guys seen this report prior to today?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so you've had time to analyze it.
We have.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so did this provide you the information that you all were seeking?
I believe it.
I would think so.
Okay.
We had several ongoing communications throughout the process over the last year. So Sheena's been very responsive. She's also sat with us through the teacher increase in salary. And that is a consideration when you look at not trying to create classes of people, so that especially that cost of living factor was factored into the recommendations that came from MGT.
Okay, so just to clarify for sure, it did all the plans, I mean, that we had done, all the changes that we made with the budget for certified salaries were included in this. And also, no, I'm sorry. Let me start over. Any adjustments that we made to the classified and the state mandated bus drivers and any of those changes, these are all having taken that into consideration, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, initially I pulled all the employee data and sent it as the initial file, and then as the other increases were applied, then we refreshed the data and sent it back to MGT so they can put it within their program and analyze the salaries.
Okay, and so when I saw in here that there were only 7 respondents to the MIP survey, I just was wondering, we haven't had a chance to really digest this. It just arrived to us yesterday. And so is 7 responses enough data for that MIP survey, and how critical was that MIP survey? Ms. Horton?
Yes. So the management issues paper is strictly for either supervisors or top directors, and they can submit as many forms as they wish to submit. Some we won't receive any at all, and it's really just for letting us know about any of those
responses that we had.
From the job content questionnaire.
Yes.
So the job content, you got 1,070.
Yeah, correct. Those are employees.
So MIP is what level is MIP then?
The supervisors.
Managers.
Yeah.
And so terminology, the chiefs,
Yeah.
the chiefs,
The
like
Principals, directors.
Officers.
Yeah.
And the MIP was mainly used to identify any concerns that they may have had regarding staffing, hard to fill areas, and those kind of issues that maybe the principals were having at their school levels or the supervisors were having at their level as well, to identify any employment issues that they have major concerns with about hard to fill positions and things like that.
So then you are talking 40 plus people.
Correct.
But you only got 7. So you feel that was adequate data for what you need, adequate number of responses for what you were seeking to find and to come up with suggestions?
I think I can speak to that. Yes, because those responses were only from managers that had concerns with either the survey responses from their individual employees, that they wanted to add on something, or to say that here are my concerns with that. So if they did not have any concerns, then they didn't need to reply to this.
Thank you. Apologies, I dropped my connection, but I heard the tail end of that, Alice, and you're correct. So usually I don't know how much you heard of my response before it dropped me, but typically we might receive somewhere between, 6 to 15, 18 responses from any given MIP that we do. And if a supervisor doesn't have anything specifically that they want to report to us, they can skip the process.
Okay, because I just kind of threw out this report, and again, I probably spent an hour and a half on it, which is not enough time, but that's all the time I had for it right now. It just seemed like, City of Beaufort, no response. This school district, no response. Only 7 respondents for the MIP, and I just want the assurance that the suggestions and the recommendations that have come out of this are based on a real accurate picture of where we are, where we were. Mm-hmm. So you guys are comfortable with those responses?
And I think with respect to the MIP and not having very many people report issues shows that the board and the district has been working to make sure positions are filled or created in order to meet the ever-changing needs of the district, so that we don't have a lot of holes or a lot of things we need to catch up on.
Ingrid?
Thank you. This kind of ties a little bit to a question I have. And as Ms. Fidrich pointed out, we got this. We were in a school board meeting until 10 o'clock. I worked, I'm still kind of going through it. So I hate that this may sound unprepared, but how long did this study take from start to finish? Because I know that we were talking about this in May of 2021, and to only have 7 responses, and we had a year that this, can you tell me go over the timeline a little bit? When did this thing get signed, and how long did it take to actually do this survey or do this compensation analysis?
Sure, absolutely. So contract signed was back in October 25th of 2021. Let's see, I'm just looking at my notes here. We had an initial conversation in November, about mid-November, and I believe, let's see. We did initial kickoff, sent our data request in for initial data, and then we really didn't kick off, let's see. We did initial orientation at the beginning of December, and then we left our survey process open over the holidays into January. So from then we were doing the data collection throughout the spring, and of course modeling, updating job descriptions late spring, and then the summer was more of compensation analysis and the modeling and cost out and development of the report. With the market surveys, responses have been very, very hard to come by. Even when we do direct outreach, even when some of our clients reach out to them directly as well. It was difficult in the beginning, but even more so after the pandemic. HRs are overwhelmed, and it's really hard to get anyone to respond to these surveys, but we try to do our best in terms of making the market surveys simple and quick and easy to fill out for them, as well as doing our own research online to see what they have available that's up to date on their websites, as well as making phone calls, of course, to get those particular data points. One other item that we do as part of that process is, I'm trying to recall what, lost my thought. Yep, lost my thought. But anyway, it's pretty common across the board. We see this not just with school districts, we've been seeing it with colleges, cities, and counties. It's been very difficult to get survey responses because HR offices receive these kind of surveys a dime a dozen all the time.
Yeah, that's the market. So can I just back up for 1 second? You said There was some sort of a survey, and clarify if that's not the market survey that was open over the holidays?
That one was the job content questionnaire. That's usually an extended process. It's usually about a month process for that, where we did the initial orientation for employees and then left it open into January for filling out any updated job data. So anything pertaining to job descriptions, updating anything relative to duties, minimum qualifications, work environment, just so everyone had ample time for it. because we were starting early to gather information. So we just decided to go ahead and do orientation and then leave it open.
So we left it open for about a month in January. And these were, you said the ones, the employees, and how many, I'm sure it's in here, how many of those did we get back? Is that the 1,000 that we got back?
I believe, let me pull up the report because I think we added that figure in. One moment.
Job question.
1,007.
Oh, does someone have it? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
So that's, and that was just went out to classified staff?
Classified staff and administrative.
Administrator. So that's probably a pretty decent percentage. I don't know what our total number is.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Crosby?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make a quick comment that not all the time do we need a survey to communicate with our partners across the hall. So we regularly visit, especially specifically in hard to fill areas in our schools and those that we're responsible for as chief officers, and I'm sure schools have the same feeling, but over the course of the last year, knowing that this salary study was coming up, I had particular interests of areas that were needed. And so I made sure to communicate those regularly with this staff, and they were very receptive to that. So I'm not sure I don't recall if I did that particular survey, but I know they know that I'm always in their offices talking to them about it. And I'm sure the other chiefs are as well. So that's another component to it that isn't really shown in the data here, but it's something that happens regularly. So.
Yes, I think there was no doubt that you all communicate about that and so on. But, when we're looking at this and trying to ascertain whether the sample size was large enough and everything, it's just kind of important to get that clarification. So, Mr. Smith?
So can you just clear at the beginning of the question Q&A, Ms. Boatwright asked, was classified as included in the survey? Or she's certified. Right. Okay. I thought she's okay. So, but uncertified is included in the survey, correct?
That's what this is. Yes.
This is all about.
Right. Right. Now they did, and kind of threw me off a little bit when I was prepping for this, is that I saw certified information in there, and I remembered that during our conversation, you all had said it was not going to look at that because that's the salary schedule, and so on. So I was a little thrown off too, just to see that in there. But this absolutely is all about the classified.
That's classified, right? In terms of gathering data and information, did you guys at any point in time have anyone on the actual with their boots on the ground talking and gathering the person information? Because everyone don't do good, or everyone does not do surveys. I believe that you go to the hills to get information, and then that you go above and beyond to get information to get correct data, because like I said, some people are going to comply, some people ain't. But do we have everybody on the ground getting this information?
Correct. And so with our team, we do the online survey, but we also do very different phone calls, outreach, as well as online research as well, separate emails too. Now, keeping in mind market surveys, that market survey is supplemental. So the custom market survey is focused on a cross-section of positions, not all positions. So part of that management issues paper survey we talked about a little bit ago that is sent to supervisors, if they, for example, indicated a position was really hard to recruit, or they were losing a particular position to, X school district, then those are the type of positions we include on that survey, because we're reaching out to those organizations specifically to gather salary input. So it's more in terms of a cross-section of upwards. I'm trying to recall the number we had. We're probably upwards around 15 survey titles, but we do benchmark and review all positions as part of our studies. So that's why we have that comp analyst database, which is our primary source, but we do lean pretty heavily on peer data as well, because if those are driving factors for those positions in your organization, we do look at the different job series and how that's affected within your system itself, and making sure we have a system that accurately reflects your workforce, but it's also competitive against those different variety of markets that you have to operate within. So think of the custom market survey and those other school districts as a supplemental to the main overall data source that we have as well.
Mr. Strivinger?
Thank you. I'm thinking the next step is Alice, that you are going to use this information and come to the board with a recommendation. I'm thinking that's the next step.
That is the next step, Mr. Strivinger.
Yes, ma'am. So it's important that you understand this information really well so that you can come to the board with a good recommendation. I just want to make sure that's the end of this, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. So along that line, I was going to say, so Ms. Walton, what were you hoping to come out of this meeting, this discussion? It was labeled as, are you looking for any recommendation from the operations committee, or what were you hoping would occur?
I am hoping that this committee will recommend to the full board that they consider our recommendations coming out of human resources, and I'm going to include Tanya on this because we are in tandem with this, to fund this study.
Fund the recommendations from the study.
Fund the recommendations from the study. And we will come back with a recommendation for implementation. So we have three options here. We will get together as a team, as a leadership team, and decide which one of these options would be best for the district, and we'll make that recommendation to the full board.
Okay, so you will, as I understand what you just said, you all are going to meet. You are not going to bring it back to the operations committee for a recommendation. You want to go directly to the board.
If the operations committee would like us to do that, we can do that. It does not matter how we get to the full board. We just want to get to the full board.
Okay. I personally don't feel comfortable enough with this report, having the limited amount of time to review it and digest it, to even give a pro or con as to what a recommendation might be from you. Because I'm not sure whether you're asking for that whole 9.7% increase or part of it, or which option, and so on. So I would very much like a chance to review this more based on what we discussed here, and then have you guys bring back to us what the recommendation is. Ingrid?
Sorry, I had to excuse myself for a moment. So I may be repeating. I also was wondering if finance should be involved with this, because there's so much in terms of payroll and budget. Did you guys say that already?
Well, yes, they are involved. They walked every step.
I mean, the committee, not the department. If finance committee shouldn't look at this as well, I guess, if that wasn't already said.
So, yes, sir.
Suggestion is that we look at this report before we do anything, because no, this committee, not the finance committee, has read that report.
Say it one more time, Ms. Committee.
I think that the finance committee and operations should read this report, the whole report, before they make any recommendation on it.
I agree with that.
Mrs. Walton?
No, it won't cause any problem. It's just mixed in at time. It won't cause any problem.
Okay. That's just my.
Mr. Campbell?
I don't know anything at all about the report. In fact, I'm just discovering some of these pages. I looked at about 10 pages. I thought that was it. I wanted to know whether the tables were relative. I still want to know more in terms of where our district compares with a comparable district. You know, because this is overlapping information here, and I'm not seeing any concrete comparison to a Beaufort County sized district. Like Charleston is not. I see a lot of information on Charleston. Charleston is not Beaufort County. Look at a lot of different positions in the Charleston district, and I'm just glancing at that we don't have.
Charleston is our competition, as is Savannah. I think that.
Well, yeah, their competition in terms of drawing.
Right.
But
right.
in terms of jobs, living and jobs, they're not. I mean, they might be, but they're not, because it costs a little bit more to live on Hilton Head than it costs to live anywhere. And Bluffton is getting to be, as to, comparative. And besides, the jobs that we are talking about and classified in Beaufort County is not the same as the jobs in Charleston. So I that's why I want to see, well, some of them, I'm talking.
I think if we're looking at the school system as a whole, and the positions that we have to staff the system, comparatively, most of those positions are in the majority of school districts, and it doesn't matter where they are. So those jobs
or what they're called,
or what they're.
That's what MGTs
are there.
Right.
Yes.
That's in their job analysis. They would look at positions based on the description, and if the descriptions were similar, not the titles necessarily.
The duties.
Right.
Okay. And so we got something to show that Charleston role comparative to the Beaufort role and the cost on this report. Right. I mean, I'm saying I look at the job description, Charleston, I didn't see that, but it might be in there because I haven't had time to look at it.
You're right. And I think that's key. We really, like Ms. Boatwright said, everybody in this room, it was a late night last night for a board meeting, and this, I think, went in yesterday. So I haven't had enough time to really review it. But I think is time of a crucial matter for you all. Would you want to meet again next week, or would you want to meet next month? Is this something you want to expedite a decision?
I think we need to decide on what we want to do in terms of how quickly we want to get this out to employees. How quickly do we want to act on this? And I think that needs to be our basis for a decision. Tanya, I'm going to ask you to put your thoughts on the table now, because you would have to make this work financially. So I'm going to let you put your thoughts out there.
So thank you, Alice. We have been in many conversations in the last few weeks, just as we began to see the beginnings of this study. We do have a budget for both of a little over $2 million for the salary study, and we have a budget for the sick leave payouts of about 1.5 million. So during the budget process, we committed to that any savings from the sick leave payout decisions, the plan that was implemented or approved by the board would be shifted over to the salary study to be able to implement a larger percentage in the first year. My thought is it's going to require 2 years for implementation, because $2 million is not enough to cover the full cost here. I think the pay increases that we've given, the 6% plus step, made huge strides to get us a lot further than where we would have been. So I think that's a great thing that happened. But in my opinion, is that we need to look at the sick leave payout plans that I think they're on the agenda today. And then not necessarily today, but to have some decisions made on that. And then I can identify any potential savings from that budget. And then we'll be able to determine how much we can implement in year one. So
I can answer the question that Mel was asking about the schools and the positions with the salaries. Is in that study, and it starts on page 62. That's in board docs. So it starts on 62, and it has Charleston County School District and all the list of the different positions and the salaries, the minimum, mid, max, hourly rate and the days. So it's in board docs and you have it, and it starts on 62 and it goes down.
And I did want to note that any data that we gather from comp analyst isn't going to be listed in the report. That's going to be in the main master file just because of the abundance of data. It's really difficult to PDF that, and it would be add probably another 100 pages to your report. So that's included in the main file.
Okay, so it seems to me that if you continue to meet with everyone required and brought back a recommendation, we could schedule an operations committee meeting for next week. I do believe that trying to organize a joint finance operations committee meeting when we know that the members of the finance committee are welcome to join us if they want to. Difficult to try to just, so let's just.
Do you want next week or the following?
I'm seriously, I want to know what you, I can tell you, Mr. Smith and I have both received several emails from classified. Yes. They are eager, what are we doing? When is it going to happen? So I, for one, would like it sooner than later.
So you have an operations meeting scheduled for on the 22nd. Mm-hmm. You have to determine the time because that meeting is also, you were going to county council for the facilities meeting where they were going to discuss. So we're either starting at 4 or 5 for our meeting. Then there's an academics committee meeting on the 24th.
And an ACE board meeting on the 25th.
And there's an ACE board meeting on the 25th. Then on the 26th through the 28th is school law conference.
What's on the 23rd?
So legislative has just been canceled. So now the 23rd is open.
And that's a Tuesday, right?
That's
Tuesday the 23rd.
Yeah.
Ingrid?
Tuesday.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I know we've got the Title IX presentation is pretty much all we're doing on the 22nd. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
How long do you think that'll take? Robin?
Not long. That's Alice. It's underneath.
Then why don't we add it to the 22nd and start at 5, which I hate, but if we've got that public facilities county council meeting at 3.
Is that at 2 or 3 over at county council?
Or maybe it's 2. I can't remember. They moved it, right? Hold on, I'll look here.
Facilities, is that at 2 or 3 on Monday?
That's what I'm checking.
That's a really good idea, Ingrid. Would that give you enough time? I think give you enough time to come up with a recommendation.
If we have a decision on the sick leave payout plan today, I can bring back we can bring back a recommendation
on Thursday. Yeah.
From Monday.
No, wrong. The one at county council, the one that when they're going to take the vote on the 22nd.
Oh. I don't have that on my.
Okay, because that was either going to be scheduled at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock.
I'm checking. I've got it here.
Our meeting at 5 o'clock then.
One more second. I'm almost there. Public facilities. What 3? They have 3 o'clock on their schedule.
Can you all do 5? I know it's late. It's the end of the day.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay.
Okay, and then it will just have. So who's presenting Title IX? Isn't that Ms. Swinton?
That's Ms. Swinton. And right now, all on. So it's the same.
Okay.
And she's okay with 5 o'clock?
She'll be okay with it.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So then you will, just to summarize, you all will bring a recommendation.
Yes. On
Monday at 5 o'clock for that meeting. And that will then allow a little more time to digest some of this and have any other questions that we might have. Are we comfortable with this?
Yeah.
Good. All right, great. So why don't we jump into sick leave and vacation day payout initiative. So Ms. Horton, thank you very much for your presentation here. Do you want her to stay on for this?
She does not need to show.
Please do not feel you need to stay and listen to this next part. And I'm sure, and I know that if we have any questions, we certainly can reach out and ask you.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you for having me today. It was a pleasure to present to you. And do feel free to reach out anytime with questions.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye. Ingrid, is your hand still up because you have a question?
Nope. Lowering.
Okay. All right. Sick leave and vacation day payout initiatives.
Okay, so I think I'll kick this off and then I'll include Tanya, Dale, and Matt in this discussion. The board has, directed us in the summer at one of our work sessions to go back and come back with a plan in terms of compensated employees for days that we give them up front that they don't use, and to bring us out of the pit of paying $10 per day. Yes, I will. Thank you, Ms. Frederick. That was a perfect word. Can I repeat that word?
Oh, yes.
Ms. Frederick just said, take us out of the embarrassment of offering employees that have served us well $10 per day for sick days that they've approved and not used. So we have come up with a proposal to compensate employees when they retire from Beaufort County, to pay them a percentage of their daily rate for those days that they did not use, as well as for those employees who lose days every year because they don't use them, because they are dedicated employees and they work. And our proposal is in front of you, and I'll let Dale talk us through it because he has all of the background information about how much money we have spent in the last 5 years compensating employees that retire at $10 a day, plus what it would cost us if we compensated employees half of their daily rate when they retire. So I'm gonna turn it over to Dale. We worked diligently, and I think I need to reiterate this with Tanya. She is our partner in anything that we do in HR that involves compensation, because we don't want to go out on a limb and say we're going to do X, Y, and Z when we are not able to do it. So Tanya is our partner here with us. So I'm going to give the floor to Tanya and Dale. Then we'll let you go.
Okay, so when we first started looking at the that lapse stage, we want to know how many actual days that the staff were actually losing over, and we looked at it over the last 5 years, and normally it was right around 1,300. 2017, 2018 was 1,320. 2018, 2019 was 1,402, and then 2019, 2020 there were 1,621 days. 2020 to 2021, and that was an anomaly because, as you know, we were doing a lot of remote learning, so staff weren't taking as many sick days off at that time because of the remote learning factor. And so that year we lost 2,498 days by staff. Last year, the 21-22, at the end of that school year, 1,620 days were lost by staff. So we started looking at that, and of course, what could we do in order to compensate these individuals and to even reduce the number of sick days that are being taken in the district, which if we can reduce that from our staff, then it reduces the number of lost instruction hours as well, which is sometimes more important than the dollar factor, because when you're looking at nearly over 200,000 hours of instruction time that's lost, what can you do with that time every year? So we started looking at, what can we pay? We had discussions with finance, with superintendent, with our leadership team. And so we came up with the proposal of paying them half of their daily rate for lapse days. So what would happen at the end of the school year, we would pull a report of those individuals who had lapse days, and then determine the financial impact of that and make a decision to pay them 1/2 of their daily rate for the number of days that they have lost. And then we looked at the number of days for those who have retired over the last 5 years as well, and that impact 2017, 2018, there was almost 2,000 days paid out. 2018-19, we had just a little over 2,300 days paid out. 2019, 2020, we had 2,125. And 2020, 2021, we had 2,800 days paid out. And of course, at $10 a day, you can estimate what that cost was. At 28.16, that's $28,167 at $10 a day, which is an embarrassment, as Ms. Fidgers has indicated. So we decided, where can we start? We started looking at the full day payout. That was nearly $700,000 just for the wages and not the benefits of the $700,000. Because even though we're paying out $700,000, we're still responsible for the taxes, Medicare, Medicaid on that money. However, we would not have to be responsible for the retirement on those days because they're leaving the system. So we decided that maybe that was too aggressive. So we decided to go to half days with our sick day payout for our retired staff, rewarding them for their longevity. And there was also a qualifier on the retirement to prevent individuals coming from Jasper and work for a year and then retire on us. And so we put it, we talked with Tom Barlow, our attorney, regarding this, and we can implement a qualifier. So we believe that in order for this to occur, you have to have been with the district at least 5 consecutive years at the time of your retirement date in order to be eligible to receive the payout at your half day. And so that'll just prevent people from coming here for 6 months or coming here for a year and then retiring on us just to reap the benefits of their half day payout for their sick leave.
I don't get that. I mean, what are you saying?
Well, what I'm saying
got there for 1 year. And
no, what I'm saying is the 5-year consecutive year requirement.
I understand that.
So if I come here from Jasper this year and I've got my 90 sick days, thinking that I'm going to get paid, I'm only going to stay with the district for a year, just only to reap that benefit. We don't believe that's fair. Just to come here, just to.
Do we get 90 for 1 year? Is that 90 already?
Well, no.
Document, or you get 9 or 10 or whatever. I'll get 90.
So that's what I'm saying. I can accumulate 90 days.
Yeah.
Okay. I could come here from Jasper County with 90 days because the legislature says that we have to accept their sick days.
Oh, we have to take Jasper sick days.
Yes.
That's the clarity I need.
So if they come here with 90 days, 6 months.
That's the clarity I need.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a transfer. That's a transfer in. Then
Yes.
they get you transferred.
We get taxed because they're transferring in sick days.
Yes. Exactly. So preventing them from bailing on us in 6 months or a year.
We can't put qualifiers on that employment, on that transfer.
Reduce the number that can be transferred over, you say? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, we can't do that. The state, they have to.
We have to.
State law. We have to.
Transfer in their days that they have from another organization within the state, the system.
Okay.
And if they chose to leave after 2 years or 3 years before they were vested, they would get $10 a day.
Okay. Mr. Strivenger?
Thank you. Regarding the cost of this, I've always viewed this as kind of a budget neutral. I don't think it's going to cost us anything because every day that they don't use a sick day, we don't have to pay a substitute. And I have a feeling we probably pay substitutes more than half day wages that we pay the teacher. So I think this is budget neutral, but I'll let Tanya weigh in on that. But that's always been my view on it. And beside you emphasized this, beside the financial non-impact of this, there's the instructional value of having that teacher in the classroom, and you can't put a price on that. But money-wise, I don't think we need to worry about it, because I think the money comes out of what we budgeted for substitutes.
Mr. Scrivener, might I speak to that? This is Matt Hunt. Last year in 21-22, we had a total of 31,621 vacancies, teacher vacancies for subs. Of that, 22,000 of those filled and 9,450 were unfilled. And that still resulted in a loss of 237,000, over 237,000 instructional hours.
Definitely. We need to do something to try to keep teachers in the classroom.
We've got a 3-year rate of 572,000 instructional hours lost. So, and that's over 3 school years.
Ms. Boatwright?
Yeah, and I support this, but I will say it's not just teachers, it's also administrators and, where we don't have to. So it's not going to be completely budget neutral, because there are positions that we don't have to pay someone to fill in when someone calls in or has a personal leave day. Right? We're not talking about just teachers?
Right, that's correct.
I don't understand English question. What's she saying?
She's challenging the budget neutral comment. So there are 2 initiatives here. Are you asking for an or? I mean, are they or and?
We're asking for and.
And.
Yes.
Well, I do have a problem with 5 years, because 5 years is a bit, that's a lot. You're asking someone to say, you have to come and give me 5 years for you to pay off. That's almost like a bribe. I kind of look at that could be a bribe. You need to give me 5 years for this. I mean, we don't have the bonuses, so why would we do that with these?
Well,
I mean, and it's almost like we could be also shooting ourselves in the foot, because we could have that great teacher that kind of getting older, or that teacher that got to be closer to home. So now we didn't have these days. I can't move closer to home because of the fact that I'll lose my days if I move to Beaufort. So do we really need them? I mean, I think there's some variables here that we should think about too. Then that 5 years is where I'm stuck at. That right there, I can't support that. You guys want
the reason we put 5 years in is because this is a recruiting and a retention initiative. So we want to recruit them, but we want to get the best service out of them that we can. So they're going to come here, at least give us 5 solid years before you say, I'm going to retire. So it has to be something that they want to do, because otherwise they wouldn't leave their district. They could stay in their district and get their pay out there. So this is for recruiting.
And we're asking them to invest in Beaufort County.
It's not unusual for an industry to have investing time.
Yes.
But,
it is.
Ms. Boatwright, you have a question? Okay. Ms. Boatwright?
I have a question. I'm in apparently a challenging mood. As a parent, I would support the 5 years, because you want some continuity. You don't want employees that come in, stay for a year and leave, or come in and stay for half a year and leave. So I do think that if this is a recruitment initiative or a retention initiative, we should have a 5 years. So I'm just challenging.
Yes. Thank you. So let me just ask you a question. If was there any consideration to the individual, the teacher or whomever that doesn't stay till retirement and has, 30 days, military orders, they have to leave, and they, have 37 days of sick pay accrued? Was there any consideration to increasing or right now that teacher would have no compensation because she retires or he resigns. So no compensation for those unused sick days. So is there any consideration to have, what a great retention tool that, hey, listen, you're military, you're here for 3 years, you're going to earn 36 days. And if you don't use them all when you leave, you get no pay for those 36 days. What was that part of this discussion?
We talked about that as well. One, the policy reads that you only get paid your sick days upon retirement. So if I'm only here for 3 years and I'm not retiring here, then we don't pay sick days out for anybody who leaves the district unless you retire in accordance with the policy.
So is that board policy or is that state statute or what is that?
That is an AR.
And so it's district, it's district decided.
Decided by the district. I don't think we'd have a budget big enough to support paying every single individual who resigned and left the school district and pay them out for their sick days that they have. Because you're probably looking
We have an average of how many
350 to 450 new employees every year. And plus, you know, a lot of them don't use all their sick days, and to pay that out, I don't even know how we could begin to cover that. That's astronomical.
That we have that many sick days that's not compensated for people leaving. I mean, almost all the districts in America probably give some kind of severance pay for those sick days.
You transfer the days.
Well, I mean, even if you're just leaving and don't transfer, they give you severance for the sick days. That's your severance pay, leaving the district, leaving those districts.
That does happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
It does happen.
I mean, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure that's built into the cost of our substitute system also.
And so I would think that certainly would be a way to keep teachers in the classroom. If I know I'm leaving on orders in 3 years, and I could accrue 36 days of sick leave and not take, 36 days, that's a month of, well, it's a month of instruction, well, it's more than that actually. 5 times 40.
But that just goes back to
$1 million.
But that just goes back to the point of catch 22, something I said, where we have a teacher who's working over in, who's living over, who's working over in Jasper, and her doctor tells her, hey, okay, you got about 3 more years before you can retire. Hey, you need to go back somewhere closer to home, or you need to find a job. So now she comes in and teaches here for her last 3 years. We don't pay her out either. That military person is no different than that person who's been living before who works in Jasper. And her doctor would tell her, you need to come back home. So do we give her the same discipline that we give that military person? What's good for Goose got to be good for the gander.
I think if,
5 years time.
I don't see them exactly apples to apples, but David?
Thank you. This is just for lapsed 6 days. What would it cost us if we changed that to unused sick days at the end of each school year? Because lapsed only rewards our more experienced teachers. And the 1, 2, 3, 5 year teachers have to save to get to that lapse thing. What if we said it was just unused, so that even those people with only 2 years in, if they didn't use their sick days that year, they could get compensated for half the rate of pay at the end of each year. I've seen that done in business, and it reduced the 2 times I remember it reduced absenteeism by almost 20%. Have we considered that?
Mr. Scrivener, we have talked about that. We did talk about that. And one of the things that came across in that discussion was if we allowed teachers or employees to sell back their days at the end of every school year, then they would not have the opportunity to accrue days for any illnesses in the future. Maternity leave, FMLA. If they got rid of all of their sick days at the end of every year, they start off with 0 every year. So they will never have any saved sick days to use in case of an emergency.
Right, but that would be their decision to make each year.
That is
right?
correct.
They could either save them or they could cash them in. I don't think, we're being kind of maternalistic and looking out for their best benefit. I think they can look out for it themselves. So I would like to give them the option of either cashing in or accruing it. And I think that really helps with those newer employees. I just think that's a big benefit for newer employees. And I've seen it really reduce the absentee rate. And, that's what we're trying to do.
Ingrid?
Yeah, counterpoint. One thing that came up with, the pandemic is if you're incentivizing people not to use their sick leave at that, like what Mr. Sturbridge was talking about, do you not run the risk of people coming to school ill? Which is something that there is a lot of backlash against right now. If you're sick, stay home. And I don't know. I know some employers do. To me, it's always been something affiliated with retirement. My parents retired. They cashed out their sick leaves. There's all these little things you can do. So that would be sort of something I would want to think about more. I don't want to be paternalistic, but I also don't want to incentivize people to come to school with illness. And then the second, I have a question as well, which is, there are the way we structure a payout has tax implications. And so some school districts and some other businesses have gotten more creative about how they allow employees to choose to cash that out. Have we discussed that at all or thought about that?
I have discussed that with others. One of the similar or common practices is to require those funds to go into a retirement account.
Right.
So that would help too. I think that's what you're referring to, is to require it to be put into an annuity. And I think even Dr. Rodriguez mentioned he was aware of other districts doing something to that effect.
I don't think you can have to require it. I think you can give them the option that, hey, you can cash this out, but you're going to pay, ordinary income tax on it, or you can put it into an annuity and avoid I don't think you have to require. I think you can give them an option. And personally, I would like to see it as an option so that they don't immediately lose half of their half at payout.
So what I'm hearing is that I think that these are two very good initiatives, right? Maybe some consideration to the 5-year, but I think the majority think these are two very good initiatives. And I would not want to delay this for any future investigation into would it be possible to offer some type of payout for unused days, even for those not retiring, all right? But for the purposes of today's meeting and this, so as not to hold this up so that you can add this into the calculation for the determination of the feasibility of doing this pay raise, does Ingrid or Mel, would you like to bring this forward to the full board, or what are your recommendations for initiative 1 and 2?
Just a quick point of clarification. So what we're talking about is bringing this forward and continuing to have some conversations about if there's different things, because we all agree on this aspect of it, right? Is that kind of what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay. And actually, I don't even know if we're going to bring it to the board, or you just need to know that this is the way we're leaning, because you're coming back on Monday and we won't have a board meeting until September.
Yeah. We would come back with a recommendation, assuming this proposal would be accepted. The sick leave payout proposals would both be accepted, and that any savings from this would move into the classified salary study to further implement that to its extent in the first year.
Right. So my personal belief, and we're not taking a vote on this, but just to express to make sure that we are getting the pulse, is that I think that this is so much better. It absolutely is. I appreciate the work. It's a very good start, and appreciate the work and the thought in on this. Mel?
I can make it retro 24.
No kidding. No kidding. I hear you. Ingrid?
Yeah, do you want me to make a motion to bring this to the full board?
No, we're not going to do that. We're just going to, they're just checking the pulse because on Monday we're going to have a meeting, but Tanya needs to know whether this is the right, including this in the bigger discussion.
Go forward with this and that.
Yeah.
But also in the process of that, I have a process question that I've been asked as well. In terms of these days, I know that you can only give a certain amount of days. Like you may have two sisters in the district, or a brother and a sister who may have a lot of days. And the question is, why can't that brother give their sister their days too? For instance, the sister is sick. You're going to give. So that is something too that I think that we need to a policy that need to be changed, because I was told that there was a situation where two cousins wanted to give one cousin wanted to give the other cousin days because somebody else already had to be giving them too much days, that there's a cap out. I think that we should offer people that too, that option too, because that would definitely save us if we allow people to if we allow people to give other people their days. I think that's something that should be spoken to.
So if I can address that, Mr. Smith, we've had that discussion with our labor lawyers about sharing sick days among each other in districts. And he's advised us that it's something we do not want to do. No other district in the state does that because it is difficult to manage, it's difficult to report, because you're giving financially across lines, because my day is my day. I've been paid for that day. And then I'm giving my day to you through the system. It was a whole elaborate discussion that he had with us, but the bottom line was we wanted to stay away from that. Our sick bank that we had in place was fine. But in terms of having employees share days, it was something that he didn't advise that we were going to.
Your daily rates don't match up.
No, your daily rates are not necessary.
I mean, and that's fine, and that's all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, we're trying to come up with different ways. I still don't have a problem with that still being an option. I mean,
would you be okay with this? I mean, could we put that conversation on hold, because that is not pertinent to what this is right here? And
I think it has everything to do with this though.
No, it doesn't. Well, so
with sick days, because this is sick days.
Well, you're right. This will impact the sick bank.
Right.
I mean, and all that. But I don't think it's for this conversation. Just so that this team knows to go forward and next Monday bring us back a recommendation. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And we have one more topic that you also the substitute pay update, which would not affect this.
That's correct.
Right, but it's just something that we did ask for. So Ms. Crosby, do you have what you need just to work with? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, the next item, Ingrid, do you have a question?
Well, this is all going to tie in together, but I think HR 16 needs to be revised. I don't know if Ms. Cartledge is still on the phone or still on the line. A couple of the statutes that are referenced, and the reason I bring it up is because in our HR 16, family members can give leave to other immediate family members. So if we've gotten legal advice that says we ought not do that, I think we should update that AR.
Ms. Fulbright, it is in the process right now.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, subpay.
Yes. So Dr. Rodriguez said that some board wanted to know, and he's been approached by some subs about increasing subpay per day. We did that last year. And as the document in front of you shows, we have listed the previous rate to the rate that we are paying right now. And we listed every sub or every position that we pay through ESS, what the old rate was and what the current rate is. Our previous rate for certified subs per day was $90. We increased that to $120. So that's where we are right now. If the board wants to look at any increases beyond that, you would have to make that recommendation and finance would have to say yes or no, and we would go from there.
think it would be a budget conversation and perhaps not for this year, with the current constraints of the budget that we have to be for some future budget. Okay.
I understand that. I think it's a conversation worth having. How difficult is it to get a certified sub in the classroom?
Awfully difficult.
Awfully difficult. And are we of the belief that an increased rate, that we might be able to increase our certified subs, our retired teachers, someone coming back if we had an increased rate? I mean, would that be
I think that's a fair statement. I mean, last year, when it was $90 and then we switched to 120, I think mid like early winter, our fill rate last year was only 70%.
Okay.
So that left a lot of strain on the buildings for teachers to have to share classes, split classes, use their planning time to go in. So that was tough.
Yeah.
The year prior to that, 2020, 2021, we had an 88% fill rate. The year before that, we had a 94% fill rate. But last year,
but we had COVID as well.
Yes, we had COVID. And some people, yeah, that's right.
Right.
So
there weren't as many absences because we taught virtually.
So I just had some concerns when I was looking at the numbers here. How many hours a day does a certified sub work? What is it, 6.5 or 7?
Well, they're paid on 7.5 hours.
Yeah.
7.5. So when I looked at this pay scale, and you look at, let's say, a permanent paraprofessional SPED teacher or a clerical nurse at $18 an hour, they would end up making more than a certified sub? Because if I take 18 times 7.5, and I did 6.5, I didn't know how many hours. You're talking that they walk away with more money than a certified sub.
That's right.
And I don't think that makes sense to me. Let's see. So like I said, I did 6.5 hours. So a clerical nurse could make $117 a day to sub if it's 6.5 hours, but a nurse only has $100 a day. So your clerical nurse is making more than your nurse. If you have a certified sub, and let's work backwards, I did the 120 divided by 6.5, I think comes out to $15 a day. So they're making less than you would pay for a permanent paraprofessional in a SPED classroom. I'm just wondering, did we look at those numbers to break it down to the hourly rate and realize that if my numbers are correct, and that's a qualifier, that you'd have a clerical nurse making more than the substitute nurse?
Now, I think the nurses, we changed hours for them because the rate was what it was. So their hourly rate would not fall into that. I don't think they're at 6 hours a day. I think we changed those.
Okay, but I mean, you get my point. So let's say you're saying, all right, you got someone making $18 an hour and they work 7.5 hours, right? So even if it's just 7 hours, it's $126, and a certified sub gets paid $120.
Yes, you're correct.
So you've had this conversation. I mean, and everybody's good with that.
No, of course we're not good with it. We would love to pay them $200 a day, but we always think in terms of budgeting and how much can we afford, and what is our sub budget for you. That's what we think.
You do have to. But you know, it's something I said.
Wait, excuse 1 second.
But the different counties and job descriptions, you do have to think about the role, and I mean, and you know what the job is worth. You know, and that's a big part of the budgeting process in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. And I agree that, you know, how does my question aside from that is, how does this impact, or how is it going to be impacted by the sick leave, that decision making? What we pay the sub, how many subs we're going to need now? Is that going to be
hopefully fewer, right?
Yeah, hopefully fewer, right? That's the goal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm saying, if you know, of course, that's not going to be it's not gonna add any money in the budget, but of course, is it gonna allow us to pay that fewer so more money?
Good question. Ingrid? Was that a rhetorical question?
Yeah.
Because there's no answer, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
not gonna-
Ingrid?
not gonna be answered.
I agree with all the concerns you're raising, Ms. Fidrich, in terms of how we structure this. I think what I find missing from this presentation is the data on what our sub issues are. I mean, was the 120 enough, or are we still having all kinds of problems? How many certified subs are there? Did a bunch of them retire with COVID? I mean, it seems like we have data. I think it was Mr. Hunt, I'm guessing, that talked about fill rate and that talked about, this data is available. So when we're looking at this and we're hearing concerns, and I've certainly heard the concerns, and as an aside, I will say I was talking to a teacher. I said, would you ever consider coming back and, or as a sub? And she said, you could not pay me enough. We got to get some of our discipline issues and some of our mental health stuff under control, but that's just a different topic. But I think that we need to look at how many subs we have, how well staffed we are, how much of a struggle it is. I know personally that my son had essentially no teacher for a while. It was one teacher kind of watching two rooms because they couldn't get a sub. And so I would like to see data on that. And if money could get us more subs, I think we need to do it, because I think we've got I know we've talked about this with COVID. I don't think it's as much of a big deal, but where they would just take classrooms full of kids and basically herd them into the cafeteria or the gym because they didn't have a sub. So at some point we're going to reach not a patient safety, work stuff, a student safety. And so to conclude all this, I think we need some data.
Yeah. So go ahead, please.
We have that data, Ms. Boatwright.
I think you did.
We can pull it for you by school. We can pull it for you in terms of fill rate by school. What school has the best or worst fill rate? The number of subs that we have assigned for each building. So any data you want, we can pull it for you. We get that constantly.
Yeah, I'd like to have this conversation come back with that data and really look at it and see if there's a way for us to be impactful about that. Because I hear stories as a parent. I don't know if they're all true, but I think it is a crisis in the schools.
You don't have to think on that. You really don't need I
have some firsthand knowledge.
Study to know that. I mean, it's hard to staff. What COVID did in the realm of substitute teachers is that we had a lot of retired subs and people that were over a certain age. They just stopped working altogether.
About 150.
Yeah, we had about 150 that stopped. They just stopped working altogether. So that accounts for a huge gap in why our fill rate was so low last year.
Okay. So
just to go back to the point that Mr. Smith was making, in terms of, I believe your point, correct me if I'm wrong, was that you can have a person who's working, make a regular person working a regular job, they make $8 an hour, that they can make more than a certified sub.
Well, I wanted to run the numbers again.
Right, but my point I would say is that also we're looking for long term too, because that person who was certified sub, they're already getting retirement. So this is a bonus for them to come in. So we have to also take care of that person who's on staff too, because they're trying to get to that point of retirement. So we have to make sure that we kind of careful on how we spend it, because it could come across as though because you're certified, it could create a war between being certified and uncertified. We value one more than the other, and I think that's.
Mr. Smith, I have to interrupt you on this. We want certified substitutes in our classrooms. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but you know what? We are not going to discuss this right now. It is time to call this meeting to an end. This is a great door opener.
Yeah, but I just want I wouldn't want to put that perception out, because I value them all. We all matter, not one group particularly.
Please do not hear me saying one person matters more than another. One fit. However, who do we want in a classroom? We want a certified teacher in the classroom. So I thank you guys so much. This was just an awful lot, a lot of information. We'll discuss this at a different time. We have a meeting on Monday at 5 o'clock, and you have what you need to go forward with bringing that back on Monday, right? Excellent. Okay. All right. Ingrid, do you have a final statement?
No, I don't. Sorry. Thank you. Excellent job, Ms. Fidrich. We got it done in 2 hours.
I was late. All right, will we adjourn? Yes, adjourn. Thank you, everybody, very much.
Thank you.